it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the Hello Bluebird Bouquet Buddies, and I will get to the coloring in a little bit. But first I'm going to do all of the stamping that I need to do with this beautiful bouquet of flowers. I'm starting with the leaf image, and I'm stamping that in Lawn Fawn's freshly cut grass. These are new images, so I thought I cleaned them off fairly well, but I guess I missed some spots because the ink didn't adhere as well on the first round. But as I continued to stamp that down, I got a much more solid impression, and that ink does kind of level out as it dries into the cardstock. So I stamped that down 3 times, and then I'm taking some noble fir and I'm just pouncing it on different places. I don't want to coat the entire leaf cluster with that. I just want to add some to like the tips of different leaves and to the stems. And I'm using my Twiddler's Nook Pressure Pal to help me also get a really good impression and make sure everything is nice and smooth. So I'm moving on to some flowers now. I'm using the 2 that kind of look like roses, and I'm stamping those down in Peachy Keen ink. So I'm just cleaning those off with my Lawn Fawn stamp chamois off to the side and re-stamping until I get a solid image. So once I have that, took about 3 stampings again. The third time was just a little bit of a just to cover that one little spot that didn't seem to want to stamp down correctly. And then I'm going to take the next layer of those images. These are 2 separate images. There's one that's slightly larger and one that's a little bit smaller, but I wanted them to be the same kind of flower, just different sizes. So I'm adding that center layer or the middle layer, I should say, and doing that in some wild rose ink. And I'm going to stamp that down a couple times as well, because like I said, that ink does dry back a bit, so I want to make sure it's still going to be nice and bold. And then finally, I will add the little dots to the center. And I love how Hello Bluebird has labeled all of the different elements for each little cluster, so it's super easy to find the images that you're looking for on the stamp sheet. So those dots I'm going to stamp in some pumpkin spice ink. I wanted a nice bright orange, and I stamped those down twice as well. Then I'm going to move on to some little like 4-petal flowers. And the first one I did, I thought was a little too dark for the look I'm going with, so I switched to Moonstone, and that was a lot better. I wanted that lighter background, and then I'm going to do a darker center. And the color I'm using for that is what I originally stamped, and that is Forget Me Not. I really, really love this color. It's such a beautiful, like, indigo blue. I did try stamping a center on one of them, and first of all, I didn't even get it in the center, but second of all, I decided I didn't like the look. I liked them better without that. So I'm moving on to the last flower that I'm going to do. I started with butter ink, and then I'm going to take the second part of this image, and I'm going to do that one in sunflower. So just a little bit darker to add that extra little layer on top. And that's going to finish off all of the colored stamping. So the other images I stamped in jet black ink from Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to color those with my Copic markers. Starting with the little kitten, I decided to make her a little gray tiger cat. So I'm using C0, C1, and C3. I'm using that C3 to lay in my shadows first, and then I'll come in with the C1 and begin to blend that out. I really wanted like a soft gray kitty, so I'm not going too dark with my shadows. And I'm leaving some white space on the belly and the face, and also the tip of the tail. But the rest I will blend out with the C0 marker. And just do that little soft flicking and scrubbing motion to get everything nicely blended. And there wasn't quite enough contrast on there for me, so I am going to do a second layer, just going right over the coloring that I've already done with that C3 once again. and then grabbing the C1 and blending that out. Just that second layer really helps smooth everything out. I almost always do it, especially on the larger images. Definitely with the critters, not so much always with like little accessory images, but anything that I want to have a nice smooth blend or just to have more depth, I will do that second layer on. Then I wanted to add some little stripy details with the C3, so I did let that dry a little bit in between. If you go in with the details too soon while the rest of the image is still wet, the stripes aren't going to be pronounced. They'll end up getting kind of hazy around the edges. So if you want nice, crisp little stripes or spots or whatever details you want to add, definitely allow that image a little bit of time to dry. Not too long. I leave it for maybe a minute or so. And then I can go in and do those little triangle shapes, just really subtle. If you wanted them to be darker, you could probably go up to the C5, but I wanted them to be subtle. So I'm moving on to my little puppy dog, and for most of him, I'm going to use E50 and E51, just adding kind of like a nice beige kind of fur color to him. So I laid in those shadows with the E51, mainly down the right side of his body since he's facing toward the left. I also cast a shadow above his muzzle since it's drawn so pronounced. I wanted it to really emphasize that. And then I blended out with the E50 and used my colorless blender to soften that up. And for his details, I'm going to use E55, E57, and E59. So I'm going to do some dark brown ears and a dark brown tail, and then I'll give him some little spots here and there. I'm going to do a little spot on each of his forearms, and then like a stripe down the back of his body going onto his haunches. And then I'm going to blend that out with the E57 and just kind of do little dotting motions to break up that E59 since it is such a dark color. And then I'll use the E55 for my lightest. So I wanted to ask you guys if you have this combination of markers, if you ever run into issues with the ink getting sticky. This usually happens to me when I do my second layer, and I have tried replacing all the nibs. I have refilled all the markers so they're nice and juicy, but every single time I get to that second layer, it just starts getting really sticky with the E57 and the E55 especially. There you can see it a little bit. Sometimes I'll grab a piece of paper off to the side and kind of press on it and a little bit of the ink will lift off. But I really don't have that trouble with any of my other markers unless they're not clean, except those. So I'm just curious if it's just me or if other people experience the same thing, and if I should maybe just invest in brand new markers for those two shades if that's the issue. But anyway, leave me your comments down below and we can commiserate and try to figure this out together. I did also give him a little ring around his left eye just to make him look extra cute and have a little more personality. And then I'm grabbing R11 and R20. I'm going to do the insides of the kitty's ears and his nose and give both critters some rosy cheeks, and I'll also do the dog's tongue with those shades. So I use the R20 first and then blend it out with the R11. And then I'll take a black Sakura jelly roll marker and go over my critter's eyes to make them nice and shiny, and then trim all of these images out with their coordinating dies. For my background, I'm taking one of the new Nesting A7 dies from Hello Bluebird, and I cut that out of another piece of Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth. I decided not to go with Bristol because I wanted it to be bright white, but I really do struggle to blend on the other cardstocks. The Spectrum Noir is a little bit better because it is a little bit of a slicker surface, but not nearly as slick as the Bristol, so I usually use that for ink blending. But For this one, I only wanted just a little bit of color in the background. I'm not going to go too crazy with that ink blending, and it's just the one shade, the Spun Sugar. So I decided to go ahead and use the whiter cardstock. For some reason, I was getting a little bit of green ink on there. I guess there was some on the edge of my tool, but like I said, it's going to mainly be covered up, so I didn't worry about it too much. And then I started to do some splatter effect, but my paintbrush wasn't clean at all. So I had to add a little bit more ink and mix it up once again to get a little bit more of a pure pink. And then I just did some splatter detail all over the back of that to tie into the pink flowers. And then to tie into the blue flowers, I decided to also do some splattered detail with some Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink. So I'm going to mix that up with another paintbrush and just add a bit more of that. And then finally, I'm going to take some of my Gansai Tambi Starry colors. I'm going to use one of these paler gold shades and add some flecks with that as well. And then I'll set this panel off to the side to dry. Then I took the next size up from the Nesting A7s and die cut that out of some Lawn Fawn Moonstone cardstock. And then I'm also going to take some of the alphabets from the Nightly LC Large Alpha die and die cut that from the same color. Then I will adhere my splattered background to the next size up Moonstone just to give it a little bit of a frame. And then I added some foam tape to the back of that, and I'm going to pop it up on top of a piece of Lawn Fawn Ballet Slippers cardstock. So I'm just popping that down into place, and then I can bring in my images and start to stage this little scene here. So I'm using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue because it has that super fine tip and it makes it really easy to adhere all these little leaves and things. I didn't want too much of them to be popped up on the edges. I did just put a dot in the center because I didn't mind if like the tips of the leaves stuck up, but I didn't want anything that would really catch on like an envelope when you were putting it there. And I just set the bottle on top to help that adhere down. And then I'm going to leave a little gap and attach the stems. And I did stamp the bow off screen. I ran out of space on that piece of cardstock, so I did it on a separate piece. And for that, I used the Wild Rose ink that I used for the middle layer of the flowers. Then I'm going to take my alphas and I'm going to spell out the word hey at the bottom of this little bouquet. And I'm purposely staggering them just a little bit and letting them overlap each other. I wanted, just a little bit of a more playful look than just having them lined up nice and straight. So I added the E a little bit lower, and then the Y is going to be going up a little bit higher. And I made sure to lift up the edge of that bow because I wanted it to overlap the letter rather than go behind it. And then the tail of the Y is overlapping the E just a little bit. So the H and the Y are going to be where my critters are going to stand. So I'm going to put the little dog on top of the Y, and I'm going to tuck him back behind that bow as well. So that's going to be the thing that's out in front. And then the kitty is going to be standing on top of the H. I thought cats are known for their balance, right? So she's totally fine perched there on that little platform. So once I have those in place, I'm going to fill in the rest of the bouquet with my flowers, starting with these pink ones. I put the larger one over on the left, and then the smaller one I'll put over on the right. Next, I'm going to add my little blue flowers and just kind of fill everything in. Make sure that nothing is like right next to the same color. I want to spread those little pops of color around on the bouquet as much as possible. I decided to skip to the yellow flowers and save the other blue one once I see where the yellow flowers are going to go. And I'm also trying to just tip them a little bit in different directions so they're not all looking exactly the same. So this final yellow one I'm actually going to tuck behind the pink rose just to get a little bit of color over there on the left side, and then the blue one I'll tuck on the rose on the right. And then I wanted to add some embellishments since this is a super feminine card, and I grabbed some sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh in both the 4 and 6 millimeter size. So I'm using my Studio Katia embellishment wand to pick those up, and I'm using my Barely Art precision craft glue to adhere them. Hopefully this will go in the mail just fine. I have not tested it, but I just really liked that it had that super fine nozzle, which makes it really easy to dot behind the sequins. So I'll report back after I see how it goes. I realized I still hadn't stamped on the inside of my card, so I took a sentiment from Happy Wishes and another critter from Balloon Buddies, which is a very similar stamp set. It's definitely unique, but it has like a similar vibe to the Bouquet Buddies. So I'm stamping that in Wild Rose ink, and again, because these were brand new images, they do have a little bit of residue from the manufacturer, so I just had to clean that off with my Lawn Fawn stamp chamois and stamp that down one more time. And then to finish off the card, I wanted to add a little bit of stickles to the insides of the sequins. I switched it up today and decided to use some platinum stickles. I thought that would tie in with that pale gold flecks that I did on the background. So I just quickly filled in all the sequins, and then I'll pick that up and lift it to the light so you can see how that catches and just sparkles. And there is another peek at the inside. If you guys enjoyed this one, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I've got lots more Hello Bluebird content coming. If you're interested in any of the products that I used, you'll find them listed and linked in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy, and you can click on either one to check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching today and hanging out with me. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.